Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Welcome back in. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me, as always, is Pop and Rick.
What's up?
We're going to continue this wonderful conglomerate series of shows that we do every year about consistent players, where we talk about the most consistent players from the previous year. There's always some interesting guys that stand out, some randos that I'm like, wow. And I wish I had more time to go through this whole list, because there's some guys on it that I'm like, all right. I
already see one or two that's kind of surprising to me.
And I don't know, man. It's February. The Super Bowl just ended, but this time of year, right after the Super Bowl, when we start diving into some of this data and information, it always gets me hyped up for the draft that's going to happen in 7 months.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say.
Me and Rick play in an old man softball league. Well, now that you live far away, I don't know if that's still the case, but anyway. And so Rick was talking to me the other day about how when it gets this time of year, and February likes to sneak in a couple of 50, 60 degree days in the state of Massachusetts. We're like, oh, okay, ready to get out there, ready to start playing again.
Right.
And right after the NFL season ends, that's how I feel about fantasy football. I just start getting jazzed up. I'm like, I'm ready to draft. Let's get it. I want to dive into these numbers and find out the gems that I can steal from all the morons in the home league and still lose again.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to not feel that way anymore.
I know.
But anyway, so it's going to be fun. Good show. We're going to talk about wide receivers, a little bit more interesting of a position than quarterback. We spent way too long on the last show, so we're going to try to break it down, be more concise. Anyway.
Yeah, be more detailed and concise. Tell you not to draft T. Higgins first overall just because he made a great catch in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I will draft Jamar Chase one just because of the one-handed catch in the Super Bowl. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyway, so we got some interesting guys to talk about. Before we do that, check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those platforms. We're going to try to this offseason, I think we got a big goal. We got to get more active on those socials. I'm active on my Twitter. You can follow me at Morgan Colby _FF, I think.
I'm active on my Twitter too.
Yeah. So on the fantasy Twitter for the Fantasy Champions. I don't know if people want to follow accounts. I think they want to follow people. So go follow us and then go follow our account.
Yes.
We retweet with our main account our crap. So anyway,
right.
Check us out on YouTube. Give us a like, comment down below, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, any other podcast platforms, please leave a review, share this podcast with your friends. Now that we've dispersed with the intro pleasantries, did I do that fast enough? 4 minutes? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway. So if we get through these 4 or 5 guys fast enough, I think we can talk a little bit about some random guys on the list that are intriguing. And I can already see a couple of different players that I'm like, ooh.
I have a question. Is this because it says 8 points is bust? Quality is 8 to 13.7, and then great is 13.7. Is this based on standard or half PPR?
Half PPR.
Okay. All right. Makes more sense.
You can do it off great if you want.
No, we'll do it half, or just do it.
I guess it's the same thing in different platforms, so it would be a little bit higher, but
yeah,
it's based on half PPR.
I feel like Cooper Kupp got more than his total, though.
You might be right.
30.
Well, either way, we'll just talk about the percentages.
Yeah.
And just ignore the points. We'll just say bust, quality, great, quality plus.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's jump right into this list. And if we get, like I said, we get through fast enough, we can talk about some anomalies. or good players that we see down further on the list that could actually represent a little bit more than what they did. But either way, we'll start off with the number one wide receiver, which is Cooper Kupp. Just to let you know, okay, he played in 17 games. He had one bust game. I think that's all I need to say.
And this is definitely standard because he only had one game in half PPR under 13 points. He had 11.
Okay, yeah, so the numbers are all screwed up.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I said, ignore those numbers, at least for the wide receivers. I don't know why that is listed the way that it is.
So would you even consider 11 points in half PPR a bust game?
No, that's a quality game. 11 points.
So would you say he had 17 quality games then?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what did I have the bust percentage at last year? I can't remember. It's usually a conglomerate average.
I think it's like around 11.
Yeah.
Or like 10.
But either way,
10.
Let's just go off this and say one bust game and ignore the numbers.
Sure.
So he had one game where he did not score a prolific amount of fantasy points. 5 of his games were quality, and then there was 11 great performances with 16 quality and great performances. Cooper Kupp was the epitome of consistency. And when you look at this list, okay, you look through some of these guys, there is a common theme with a majority of, of the top 5 that they're good receivers, obviously, but they have one thing in common. Lots of targets.
They do have lots of targets, yeah.
LOT, lot. Lots of
It's all about target share.
It's all about
target. And we said it last year, and there was people like, no.
Talking about talent. Talent over targets.
Yeah, look at the top finishes. They all have the most targets.
I mean, let's say you have to be talented to get targets. But I would say D-Hop is talented.
Yeah.
Good receiver, great receiver. One of the best in the NFL.
Brown, who was probably one of our favorite players.
Very talented.
AJ Brown might be the most talented player.
Target share not really that high.
DK Metcalf.
Same thing. Very talented.
Played all 15 games.
Target share. So, with that being said, Cooper Kupp, 191 of those fat boys.
Crazy.
Big old fat targets. It's a lot of them. Very, very large amount of targets. Me and Rick were talking prior to recording about Cooper Kupp. Some of our most interesting conversations are when we're surfing through Player Profiler, and I was saying that there is a very specific theme with Cooper Kupp. Obviously, the 16 touchdowns is a lot. I believe that is the most he's ever caught in a season. I'm curious what his average is on that. Can I just say about Pro Football Reference? I feel like every episode I complain about a website, but there are way too many ads on Pro Football Reference, and I will pay you. I'll pay you to look at your content without the ads, so this page would load. It's literally just.
Were you asking for receptions? Is that what it was?
No, I was looking for touchdowns. So in 2019, he had 10 tutties. I think that was the stretch. Remember a couple years ago when he had like a 6-game stretch where he was wide receiver 1?
Yes.
And then he just fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
I think that was the season where he had the 10 touchdowns. So normally he's right around like 5 or 6 receiving touchdowns. And if that category does end up regressing this year, obviously that would be a huge hit. But he still finished top 3. If he gets the target share that he got.
Plus he has Stafford instead of Goff, so the touchdowns will be higher than, what do you have, 3 last year in 2020?
Yeah, something like that with King Goff. Ugh.
Yeah.
But anyway, I looked at his numbers on Player Profiler, and it essentially showed up as I think it was 2.53 fantasy points per target, which is obviously really good. But the big thing about that particular number is that he was number 9 in the whole NFL on that. So he wasn't even the most efficient receiver in terms of fantasy points per target. But what he ended up doing was just getting a lot of those targets, the LOTs.
Right.
And what that turned into was obviously the wide receiver 1 season that he had. If you reduce his target share to a normal 150 targets, I still think he's top 3 or top 4. But obviously, the question going into next year, because if this, like, he's a slot receiver who gets a lot of targets. This is about as consistent as it's going to get. I don't think there's going to be a massive, huge regression where Cooper Kupp is going to crap on everyone and he's going to end up being the wide receiver 30, unless he gets hurt, the wide receiver 30 on the season. If he plays all 17 games, he's going to be a top 5 receiver. He gets the target share to do it. No ifs, ands, and buts. This is about the safest pick that you can get at wide receiver. The question is he worth a top 5 wide receiver, like a top 5 pick in a redraft league? And
if he plays like he did this past year, yes,
obviously.
But is he gonna? I don't. It's kind of just hard. It's hard to do.
Take the consistency as it is. Like that's not going to change. I'm curious. I'll give your thoughts on Cooper Kupp. I want to pull up last year's chart to see where he landed.
Yeah, he's obviously a stud. Probably the best individual season by wide receiver that we might have ever seen. I mean, the Triple Crown, Offensive Player of the Year, and Super Bowl MVP. Like, it's kind of the accolades he got this year is just unbeatable. The statistics are unbeatable, which kind of makes me, to answer your question, not want to take him in the top 5 because he's obviously not going to match that total. And he's going to regress no matter what. It's just how much does he regress. He's still going to have Stafford, so he's still going to get targeted. I think that's really all that matters at Kupp, and he's still going to get touchdowns. It's just, what did he have, 17 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns this year? Something like that?
Yes. 16. Sorry.
I wonder if I could. 16? So
yes.
I think he's probably going to get around like 12. That number's going to go down a little bit.
10 and 12 is probably a safe bet.
Yeah. And then maybe a couple less yards, couple less catches, but still a solid like top 5 finish.
Like
he's healthy.
16, like the 1947 is a lot of yards.
It is.
Like
100, like
I don't think that's repeatable.
91 target.
Like, if he got 1700 and then 1900, that's very, very impressive. I think he probably will be right between 14 and 1600 receiving yards. I think that's probably where you can peg him, which is that's a large chunk of regression, which is why I think he's a top 5 wide receiver, but not going to finish top 3.
You could even make the argument he finishes like 3rd, right? Top 3 and like that. But for him to finish or for him to be worth where he's getting drafted, he needs to pretty much repeat the season he just had, which is just not going to happen. So it's just smart to not draft Kupp in redraft this year unless for some reason he falls.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. That is Cooper Kupp. He's as safe as you're going to get. I don't know that the top 10 value that you're going to have to spend to get him is going to be worth it in the long run, but he's
going to finish top 5. He's going to get drafted in the top 5. And I don't mean top 5 receivers. I mean top 5 picks.
Overall. And that's not a value that I want to go with. Like team building wise,
me either.
In redraft, I'm probably going to have 0 shares of Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
And that's, maybe I'll spice it up
in the first round
in a league. But
end of the first round, early second round, like where the receivers, I think
in our
redraft league, the first receiver off the board was like the 112, wasn't it, last year? Well, actually, no, someone took Adams. So the second receiver off the board was like the 2-1 or the 112. And if you would consider Kupp that value, I would take him there easily. But it's just the top 5 thing is just, and I know he's going to finish top 5. The way he played this year, he's going to finish top 5, and it's just too much.
Yeah. Second guy on the list was Deebo Samuel. Some of the numbers that he had, 2 bust games, 3 quality games, 11 great games, so same amount of great games as Cooper Kupp. He actually played in less games than Cooper Kupp did, so the percentage of great games is higher. They had 88% quality and great performances on the season, which was 14 out of 17 games, and I believe he missed one. So that means that 14 out of 16 games he was a top guy. Interestingly enough, we talk about the points per target total for wide receivers. I say they need to be really good, and usually really good is like between 2 and 2.5. Deebo had the number 1 fantasy point per target number, which is 2.82. So not only was he getting, this is one of those guys, 120 targets, so didn't get a whole crap load of target share.
This is because, though, Deebo is a wide receiver first and foremost, but he got a lot of carries this year.
Yeah. I believe that fantasy point per target is broken down by just his receiving.
Yes. It has nothing to do with his rushing, I believe.
But
he had 59 carries, 8 rushing touchdowns, 365 rushing yards.
Sheesh.
He had more rushing touchdowns than receiving touchdowns.
That's ridiculous. It's absurd.
It really is.
Yeah, he's really good. There's a couple of things. Obviously, he was really consistent this year, and that's great. And we've seen him be good in the past. And the question is this an anomaly year where Deebo just ended up being really good and breaking out and being what, what's his name
it was
wanted.
the third year in the league. Like, he's a young receiver.
Yeah.
He was injured his first 2 seasons, especially last year. So I think it's possible. My biggest concern with Deebo is not necessarily, like, I think he did really have a breakout year. It's just his health. He's always been an injury-prone player.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is there's a change of quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that too.
If Trey Lance ends up being garbage or not good next year, that certainly affects Deebo a lot.
Right. No, it will. I mean, he'll still get used because of his rushing. But if Trey Lance sucks, then yeah, that's going to really affect the offense.
So I think there's going to be, for me, there's a little bit more hesitation looking at Deebo and being like, okay, this guy's for sure a top 5 wide receiver. He's for sure going to have the same amount of consistency he had last year. I think that number more or less drops to like 70% in quality in great games next year. And I think that he should be like a 4th or 5th round wide receiver. Of course, that's not going to happen. He's going to be in the 2nd round. He's going to end up going really high. And I think that people are going to ultimately be burned by Deebo Samuel. There's just too much change going on in San Francisco to look at Deebo and be like, okay, I'm buying in. Like, I 100% won. Now, there are games where Trey Lance played. And I'm going to look that up now and figure out when Trey played and how Deebo looked in those games.
He started at least one game, and then he came in another, I think. But see, I kind of disagree with you on Deebo because I also look at the possibility of what if Trey Lance is good?
Yeah.
And Deebo did what he did with Jimmy Garoppolo throwing 20 touchdowns and 3,000 yards.
You also, I think you do.
If Trey Lance throws 4,000 plus yards and 25 to 30 touchdowns.
You do like
then Deebo's going to be a
Trey
monster.
Lance more than I do. So
that's fair.
That's fair.
I always, my whole thing with Trey Lance though was like he had to go in the right situation, and he had to at least sit 1 year, preferably 2. But so we'll see. I mean, he did land in San Francisco, good situation, and he got to sit pretty much the full year. So I mean, we'll see if he's not
talking about QBBC.
Yeah, that was disgusting. But Deebo finishes the wide receiver 2 this year. Again, my thing is just health, though. Like, I really think the way he plays too, he's elusive, yes, but he's also like physical. He plays kind of like a running back. He's very prone to getting injured the way he plays. That would be a huge concern of me trying to draft him in like the 2nd round.
Yeah.
He's currently the wide receiver 5 off the board. So it's not as crazy as some people thought, but it's still, that's still early to mid 2nd round. Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Devonte Adams, and Jamar Chase are the only receivers ahead of Deebo, and he's getting drafted ahead of Tyreek Hill, which I think might be a little much.
Okay, so after my computer almost crapped itself, I did look up Deebo Samuel. So the 2 weeks that Trey Lance started were week 5 and week 16. In week 5, Deebo had 16 PPR fantasy points.
It's okay.
At a rushing touchdown, 1 carry, 13 yards, and a rushing touchdown. So obviously he's going to have the rushing there, but let's wipe that away for a second. 9 targets, 3 catches, 58 yards.
That's gross.
Yeah, that is gross. Week 16, they played Houston. He had 6 targets, 3 catches for 63 yards, and a touchdown. He also, this is when they started giving him the rock a little bit more on the ground, 7 rushes, 19 yards. He had 17 fantasy points in that game in PPR. So that's still a good game.
It's good.
Receiving wise, but the interesting thing with Deebo Samuel is like you look at the efficiency there, and like that doesn't look good to me.
The efficiency is not good. No.
There's 15 targets there and 6 catches.
Yeah, that might not change.
Yeah, no, I don't. Whereas like you look at the other games where Jimmy G was playing. 12 targets, 9 catches, 8 targets, 6 catches, 12 targets, 8 catches, 11 targets, 7 catches, 9 targets, 6 catches, like stuff like that. So, I mean, unless there's, I just don't know what Trey Lance is. That's my thing. And I don't know that he's ready to be like everyone's like, oh my God, he's going to be like Mahomes. I'm like, is he though?
I don't think so.
So anyway, we got to move on to the next guy, but yeah, I don't know how I feel about Deebo. I think I'm a little bit more faded on him than Rick is.
Yeah, I'm not as high as Deebo, I think, as most people, and you're even lower than me, which is the way I'd put it. Yeah. So,
all right. So Justin Jefferson's next: 4 bust games, 6 quality games, 7 great games, 13 quality and great games. 76% of the time he had a game where it was effective for your fantasy team. Obviously, we love Justin Jefferson. I think we had him ranked top 5 this year.
He's my most owned player in Dynasty leagues.
Yeah, very, very good wide receiver. I think he did a lot of really good things this year. I think there's concerns for me. We have to see the OC from the Rams is now the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, I believe.
Is he the one that took over?
I believe so. They're announcing him this week. I could be wrong on that.
Isn't that a good thing for Jefferson?
No, that's what I was going to say. That's really good for Justin Jefferson. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. There are rumors that Kirk Cousins, they might move on from him and go with a rookie and a younger guy, which would not be good for Justin Jefferson.
I would not like that.
But if they do keep Kirk Cousins and they give him opportunity to throw the ball, obviously he's not as good, I think, as Matt Stafford, but passing wise in the regular season when the game's not on the line, like he can do what Matt Stafford does. Statistically. So, which is good things for Justin Jefferson. He had 167 targets this year, 1,996 air yards, which is number 1 in the league. He had the target share. He had the air yards. He only finished as the wide receiver. I want to say it was like 4. Is that correct? Yeah, it's a wide receiver 4.
Yes.
And so 76% of the time he was really good. I think he 100% deserves to be a top 5 guy. I don't know if there's room for improvement on his part, unless the new scheme that they bring in is better than the one.
Yeah, that's the only way I could see it. And maybe like Thielen was hurt for some of the season, and when he went down, those were some of Jefferson's best games.
Yeah.
So maybe if you kind of move away from Thielen and really focus on Justin Jefferson as the guy instead of it being like a 1A, 1B situation, which with the Rams offense coordinator is a possibility.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I could see Jefferson finishing as like the wide receiver 1.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't think it'll happen with Cousins, to be honest. I love Justin Jefferson, but
he was it was 1.98 fantasy points per target, which is 25th in the league. So obviously he's right where he needs to be. But there was just some things that were a little bit more sketchy this year than in his first season. So I think I'm trying to find target quality rating, which was 6.51, number 16 in the NFL. So that's about a mid-range quarterback. Like,
yep.
So I think for Justin Jefferson, like you're gonna get what you get. Hopefully he does like if he reaches 150, 160 targets this year.
Yeah,
I do like that. I think that is consistent. That
he had 167 targets this year.
Yeah. 150, 160, like for next year is what I mean.
Oh yeah.
With Thielen coming back. But that is enough for me to be like, if he increases slightly in efficiency and improves, I think there's a chance that Justin Jefferson could finish as the wide receiver 1 going into 2022. I think he definitely should be a top 5 guy, 100%. But you look at this: Cooper Kupp, 191, Justin Jefferson, 167, Deontay Johnson's the next guy. He had a guarantee over 160 targets.
He was second in the league, 169 targets.
Yeah. So he had 4 bust games, 9 quality games, 3 great games, 12 quality and great games. So his efficiency wasn't really that great. And I think that was because of Big Ben, 75% of the time. Now, there's a lot of change coming for Deontay Johnson. And I think he was getting targeted a lot because Big Ben likes him. And obviously he's a really good receiver, so he deserves to get targeted. This is the guy that I have the most concern with moving into 2022, only because if he had a really good quarterback that was throwing him the ball, I'd be like, okay, we're good. Justin Jefferson got Kirk Cousins. Hopefully that guy sticks around. Matt Stafford with Cooper Kupp. But this guy, Deontay Johnson, is literally, he could have a rookie quarterback next year, or Mason Rudolph, which is not good.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, this wide receiver would be my biggest bust/fade going into the season, unless Jimmy Garoppolo ends up there, or Aaron Rodgers, or Russell Wilson, or even Jameis Winston, like somebody that can get him the ball.
Yes.
I just don't know that Pittsburgh is going to get that, and I think they're going to draft a rookie, and I don't know if it's going to mean good things for Deontay Johnson. So I love Deontay, but I think this year is going to be a wash for him, and he'll probably end up being a bust.
So I don't necessarily know, because Ben Roethlisberger wasn't good, right?
No, he wasn't, but he targeted Deontay a lot. And
he did target him a lot. He also threw the ball 600 times. So if you get, I think Winston at this point in his career is a quarterback upgrade over Roethlisberger.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Jimmy Garoppolo kind of sucks, but I think would probably be an upgrade over Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah,
I think the other guys you mentioned, obviously, Rodgers and whoever else you mentioned, were upgrades. Even if they draft a guy, he would have to have a great, or I wouldn't even say great. He'd have to have a very good season, kind of like a Mack Jones. So Mack Jones threw 3,700 passing yards. How many did Mack Jones throw? 22 touchdowns, which is the exact same as Ben Roethlisberger.
Mm-hmm.
So he, statistically speaking, he had a very similar season. He threw 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, right?
Yeah.
I think if they can get a rookie quarterback to just do that, Deontay Johnson could finish as a top 12 wide receiver fantasy. So that's pretty much worst case scenario. But it is going to depend on how, because obviously if it's Mason Rudolph, then throw it all out the window. He's going to suck. And then a rookie would be not ideal, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. But
then a veteran would be an upgrade to me. So I don't know. It's all going to depend on the offseason.
What they do, yeah.
And as of now, Deontay Johnson is not getting drafted among the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy.
Yeah, and I think people, especially in best ball where, you got money involved, I think people are starting to see, if things do go sideways for, the Pittsburgh Steelers and they end up with a rookie, Deontay Johnson probably won't have a top 10 wide receiver season this year.
Probably not.
So, yeah, for me, it's a fade unless they bring in somebody that can throw him the ball. But I also think Big Ben has the security blanket receiver. We saw it with AB for years. We saw it with Deontay Johnson.
It's true.
He has the guy that he wants to throw it to, and I don't know that the next Pittsburgh quarterback is going to be especially when you have a big physical wide receiver like Chase Claypool. You have Pat Freiermuth, who had the 6th best tight end season of all time. And there's just other guys that can be targeted in that offense. If you add a different quarterback, is Deontay automatically going to get those 140, 150, 160 targets that he got with Big Ben? I don't know. A lot of questions surrounding Deontay. If he becomes like the 15th, 16th wide receiver off the board and becomes a value, I'm on board with taking that.
That's what I'm saying. I think that has a very real possibility of happening.
Okay. All right. But that's Deontay Johnson. Consistent this year. Don't know if he's consistent in the future.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then the final guy, we're not going to have time to go through some of the interesting players on this list, like Bobby Trees, 78% quality in great games.
See that next year with Stafford, maybe. Even though he's old as dirt.
It's Devonte Adams, 5 bust games, 5 quality games, 6 great games. Pretty even keeled in the 3 categories, to be honest with you. He had 11 quality and great games. I believe he played in 16 total games, so 69, or we'll round up and say 70% of the time, he was either having a quality or great performance on the season. Changes coming for Devante Adams as well. I don't think he's going anywhere that doesn't have a quarterback. I think the most likely scenario is he hangs out and sticks with Green Bay. If Rodgers stays there, if Rodgers goes to Denver or goes to Pittsburgh or whatever, I think he's going to follow him wherever he goes, to be honest with you. Or he'll go to the Los Angeles Chargers like Rick said, and I'd love that too. But anyway, I think wherever he goes, he's going to end up having a really good quarterback involved in that situation. So I don't think it's going to damage Devonte Adams at all. I think he's one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. He is getting old. So that's kind of
he is. And I think it also will depend on landing spot and where he finishes. Like Green Bay is best case scenario if everybody stays.
Yeah. He's automatically like a top 3-4 wide receiver.
If he follows Rodgers to like Denver, he's still going to be great, but like, I don't know. Do you think he's going to be, would you draft him top 3 among wide receivers? I wouldn't. Yeah. I feel like he'd probably be like 5 or 6, which is still very good.
Where is he getting drafted right now?
He is the wide receiver. I think it was 2 or 3. He's wide receiver 3.
Okay.
So that's kind of where it feels about right.
Yeah.
But he is going to depend on a landing spot for this offseason and if he stays with Rodgers and like what the situation looks like.
I think too, when you look at Devonte Adams, it's like without Rodgers, I don't know that it's the same thing with Deontay, where I don't know that he's going to get targeted 160 times. Like if he goes to Los Angeles, I could see 130, 140 targets, but that would obviously, I think, take him out of the number 1, number 2, number 3 conversation and put him like wide receiver 6 or 7, which is different for Devonte Adams. I could be dead wrong on that. He could end up getting 170 targets with Justin Herbert and slaying it, but I'm curious to see where he ends up. And he was consistent. He's Devonte Adams. You know, you can almost expect every single game for him to put something really, really good on paper for you in fantasy football. So I think he's still a safe bet, even if he's not on the Green Bay Packers and not catching passes from Rodgers, but he's not as safe a bet as he's been in the past. And I think he's also starting to hit that point in his career where he's fading a little bit and becoming an old man.
No, I agree. He's going to be 30 this year, so.
I love it. The changing of the guard. You got Jamar, Chase, Justin Jefferson. You got Deebo. Deontay Johnson's young. Like, we're getting all these young guys.
Maybe even Jalen Waddle next year.
Jalen Waddle, maybe? Yeah. This is
CeeDee Lamb.
It'll be interesting. Very interesting in the next couple of years. You still got Metcalf, A.J. Brown. So, anyway.
The veterans are lingering, though. Mike Evans, Keenan Allen. But those guys, like, especially Mike Evans, is going to fall off, too, without Brady. So, it's going to be interesting. But
anyway, there you go. Basic consistency chart for 2022 for the wide receiver position. We have Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Justin Jefferson, Deontay Johnson, Devonte Adams. A lot of really good guys on this list. We have a lot to break down this offseason. 2 more consistency shows next week. See you later, guys.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.